Hello, I am Peter Okwacha. Welcome to Focus on Africa. Our top stories. The African Union says talks between military rulers and protest leaders in Sudan are making progress. Migrants in Libya say they were fired on by guards as they tried to escape an airstrike on their refugee camp. The UN is investigating. Also on the program, connecting blood donors with patients. 4 young girls in Cameroon have come up with an app to help tackle the blood shortage in the country after losing family members.
Many members of our family passed away due to the lack of blood.
And in sports, cash for the Cranes. The bonus boycott is over as Uganda's football team is back in training. Thanks for joining us here on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. African Union officials say talks between military rulers and protest leaders in Sudan are making progress. The negotiations had stalled since May due to disagreements over the composition of the top body that would lead the country during a transition period. Each side wanted a majority in the Sovereign Council. The resumption of talks follows a weekend of protests across cities and towns in Sudan that were organized in spite of a month-long internet shutdown. The BBC's senior Africa correspondent Anne Soy was in the capital Khartoum during the demonstrations.
The face of defiance. Sudanese determined to bring change to the way they are led. They brought to an end a brutal rule with support from the military. But that friend has turned against them. On the 3rd of June, the heavy hand of the old regime resurfaced. Dozens died. Women were raped. Life has never been the same again here. It took protesters weeks to reorganize. I met with one of the grassroots leaders at a secret location. He told me they worked day and night to spread the word about the planned protests.
We started as small neighborhood unions, and they slowly grew. People in the streets were joining us. They were very positive about the movement and friendly too. Mothers were feeding us and giving us water.
But were you concerned about your security?
We grew up in oppression. To us, it's not a new thing. After all, people have given their lives to this cause. What we are doing is nothing compared to what they gave.
He showed me one of the text messages they were sending to supporters. The main plan, when and where they would meet. But there was also plan B and C. This was the last message he had in his phone, and he deleted it shortly after this interview. A month-long internet blackout was meant to slow down and derail the organizers of the protests, but it failed. They organized in neighborhoods like this by spreading the messages through word-of-mouth, leaflets, and text messages. Protesters came out in large numbers in dozens of cities and towns across Sudan. The opposition forces for freedom and change called it a huge success in spite of the many challenges they faced.
We have no media coverage. We have no free access to the people. They cut the internet. They prohibited the direct meeting between us and the people. And with all those difficulties, still we have the trust of the people.
Direct talks between them and the ruling military leaders have now resumed, weeks after they broke down. The African Union and Ethiopia are trying to broker a political deal. The main sticking point is the composition of the top body that will lead the country through a transitional period. Sudanese are determined to keep up the pressure until civilians rule the country. Anne Soy, BBC News, Khartoum.
The United Nations says it has received reports that Libyan guards shot at migrants as they tried to flee from airstrikes that hit a detention center near Tripoli on Tuesday. At least 53 people, including children, are now confirmed dead from the attack. The UN says that there were 2 airstrikes, one that hit an unoccupied garage and then a second that hit a hangar. where there were about 120 refugees and migrants. It says the guards opened fire as detainees tried to escape after the first impact. Ramzan Karmali reports.
The aftermath of the attack on this detention centre in an eastern Tripoli suburb. It's been described by one UN official as a possible war crime. Dozens were killed and many more injured. Most are believed to be sub-Saharan Africans attempting to reach Europe from Libya.
This has been a tragic incident. The Secretary General of the United Nations has called for an independent investigation to ensure that we really understand what happened and those responsible are brought to justice. Refugees and migrants who the UN agency spoke to yesterday morning reported that indeed shots were fired at certain people, as refugees and migrants, as they tried to escape, in the chaotic circumstances between the two strikes on the camp.
A Libyan government spokesman blamed the attack on an airstrike by forces loyal to a warlord, General Khalifa Haftar. His forces accused the government side of shelling the centre. The escalation in fighting in the current civil war has led to calls for better protection for refugees. But the United Nations Security Council failed to condemn the airstrike because the United States did not endorse a proposed statement which had called for a ceasefire. For the thousands who found themselves in Libyan detention centres, living conditions are often appalling. And though numbers attempting to make the journey to Europe are falling, the dangers for those who do are rising. Ramzan Karmali, BBC News.
Let's take a quick look at other stories making the headlines across Africa and the rest of the world now. 2 people have died and at least 12 others were injured after an explosion at an oil pipeline in Lagos in Nigeria. Vandals are being blamed by the Nigerian authorities for the explosion. It comes just days after 50 people were killed when an oil tanker overturned and caught fire in the central state of Benue. A man who lost 5 of his family members on the ill-fated Ethiopia Airways flight that crashed on March 10th says he will not accept cash from a fund being set up by the airplane manufacturers Boeing. John Kindos Karanja lost 3 generations of his family. On Wednesday, Boeing announced it would set up a fund of $100 million to help families affected by that crash and another one in Indonesia. And in America, employees and school officials in California will be banned from discriminating against people based on their natural hair. It's now illegal to enforce a dress code or grooming policies against hairstyles such as afros, braids, twists, and dreadlocks. Senator Holly Mitchell said the law protects the right of black Californians to choose to wear their hair in its natural form without pressure to conform to Eurocentric norms. This is Focus on Africa from BBC World News with me, Peter Okwoche. Turning up the heat, at the Africa Cup of Nations, literally, we'll be in Cairo to see how players are coping with the scorching sun. I'm Peter Okwoche, the top story this hour. The African Union says talks between military rulers and protest leaders in Sudan are making progress. The UN Security Council fails to reach an agreement on whether to issue a statement condemning the deadly airstrike on a migrant center in Libya. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. It's now time for some sports. Let's join my colleague Piers Edwards in Cairo. Piers, a rest day, a bonus row, extreme heat, and a look ahead to the start of the knockout stages.
I don't think I need to say anything else, Peter. It is indeed a rest day, the second of 2 rest days here at the Africa Cup of Nations in Egypt. The knockout stages start tomorrow, and as you say, bonus rounds are still on the agenda. We've already seen Cameroon, Nigeria, Zimbabwe involved in bonus rounds. The latest involves Uganda, but this one does appear to be over. The players were boycotting training on Tuesday night. They didn't do it. On Wednesday night, they were late to training. Delayed by around 3 hours as the talks continued, but an extra incentive of $6,000 per player appears to smooth that over. Now, Uganda face Senegal in the round of 16 tomorrow here in Cairo. It's their first Nations Cup knockout match in over 4 decades. So understandably, their skipper, Dennis Onyango, is keen to put the incident behind him.
We had issues, but we resolved them as a team because these are issues that happen anyway. It's like anyway in the family where you have problems, but unfortunately in football it's many issues. But these are solved, and we were back on training yesterday, and we're looking at the game which is ahead of us because we've got a nation to fight for, and we've got Ugandans back home that are looking up to us. So we are just focusing on the game at the moment, and we've forgotten our past issues with the federation.
Uganda captain Dennis Onyango there. Well, a former Uganda skipper, David Obua, said today that the row was both embarrassing and a potential source of distraction to the squad. Will it be? We'll find out at 1900 GMT tomorrow. Now, the start of the knockout phase means that we're not going to see any more afternoon kickoffs here. No more 16:30 local time starts. It's all going to be after 6 o'clock in the evening, which is going to be a huge benefit to the players. We've already seen one player here collapse in training from dehydration. Dennis Onyango, the Uganda captain, had to be stretchered off the pitch the other day, also suffering from dehydration. Caroline Wachira, Lynn Wachira of BBC Sport Africa, has been taking a closer look at what is a hot topic.
Egypt in midsummer. It's incredibly hot during the day.
I don't think we should be playing under so much heat anymore. It takes a lot because it lowers the intensity of the game also. That's the only way you can manage the game.
The Nations Cup may be over 60 years old, but this is the first time in a bid to ensure all players are free of club engagements. It's been held in June and July.
When the hydration sets in, it will affect most of the vital organs in the body. For example, the renal system will be affected, the cardiovascular system will be affected. Fainting and health being endangered in life is the paramount thing that we are trying to, like death occurring, trying to prevent.
Shifting the tournament from its traditional January and February slot to June and July is a hot topic in more ways than just one. The first week saw highs of up to 38 degrees Celsius forecast in host cities around the time of the afternoon kickoffs at 4:30 p.m.
Following advice from the world governing body FIFA, there are extra breaks for drinks. Players and officials get 3 minutes to chill out after 30 minutes and 75 minutes.
I don't think it should be happening, but there's lots of fixtures and TVs have to show the games, so we can't complain about it. We just have to push ourselves and play the games.
But not everyone agrees.
It's very, very difficult for both of teams and the players, and the temperature is so high, and big problem for everybody. The game in African Cup champions must play only in the evening time.
Elsewhere, FIFA has already been forced to move the next World Cup in Qatar to November and December to avoid summer temperatures that can top 40 degrees Celsius. So how dangerous is this for the players?
There is very little danger if you are going to follow the guidelines, taking fluids and having short breaks, and should be fine.
Cameroon are scheduled to host the next Africa Cup of Nations in 2 years. The decision to move the tournament to June and July means the hottest debate on where the Nations Cup should be held won't end anytime soon.
Lynn Wachira there, and I'm joined in the studio by Lynn. Now, Lynn, we heard about the 2 players who were badly affected. What exactly happened to them?
Of course, Piers, it's not hard to see why heat is such a hot topic, apart from the action that we have been witnessing on the pitches, because when you have players being affected and eventually that affecting how they play, it's a big deal. For Sami Kadu, of course, Sami Kalu of Nigeria Super Eagles, that happened actually before the group stages of the matches, where he collapsed and in training was taken ill to hospital. There were, back and forth. What happened? Heart attack? Is it heat? But it has been confirmed by Nigeria that he indeed suffered from a heat-related complication. He eventually missed the opening match in which his country played against Burundi. And in the second match, he also just featured for 20 minutes because the team is trying to, to manage him and to slowly introduce him into the heat. And then just the other day, the last day of the last group matches where Uganda's first choice goalkeeper, Dennis Onyango, while playing against Egypt, he had to be taken to actually be wheeled off the pitch, not walk off the pitch.
Stretchered off.
Stretchered off the pitch. And we got to speak to him at the mixed zone, where he did say categorically that it was heat related. He was playing, and suddenly he experienced a decrease in his blood sugar, and he attributed that to heat. So it's not hard to see why it really is a hot topic.
And now let's just talk about the goals, because as I understand it, we are set in the knockout stages to see more goals. You've been crunching the data. Why so?
I have been, and it has affected the players, like physically and their health. But then it has also affected how they have played, in terms of most of them have actually said that they have had to lower the intensity of the match if they're playing at 4:30, because that's the only way to manage under the heat. And when you look at the statistics, of course, 7 matches were played at 4:30 in the group stages, and an average of 1.4 goals scored.
Just over one goal a game.
Just over 1 goal a game. And then you look at the matches played after 9 p.m. and over 2.5 goals per match was scored. And it's where we actually witnessed about 2 matches had 4 goals and above. Looking at the matches played at 4:30, no match registered more than 2 goals.
Thank you very much. Okay, Lynn, I think it was, just over 2.5 or nearly 2.5 goals per game for the evening kickoffs, in comparison to just 1 over goal a game for the mid-afternoon kickoffs. Now, one coach who's not too happy is the Benin boss, Michel Doussoué. His side are in action tomorrow. They were the last to play on the final day of the group stages. They're the first to play in the round of 16. Nonetheless, Benin are looking to reach, they're in the knockout stages for the first time in their history. They've never won a game at the Nations Cup, but they're confident, or of a miracle perhaps, when they face Morocco tomorrow.
We are not dreamers, and we take it match by match. We're here. We deserve to be. We didn't steal it. We'll put on a good show.
On démarre une autre compétition, entre guillemets.
It's a new format for this tournament, with the additional round of 16. For me now, what will make the difference is a different mental approach to this match with the same aim. We should be united and make as few mistakes as possible. And be careful, because matches like this can go either way. We need players like Mbak Boussoufa to use their experience, and we have a lot of them on this team.
So Benin Morocco at 1600 GMT, the first of the knockout games. Lynn, very, very briefly, which games are you most looking forward to in the round of 16? I just want you to pick 2.
Piers, by the virtue of being an East African, I'm definitely looking forward to tomorrow's game, pitting Uganda Cranes against Senegal. And you know why? Because Senegal played against Tanzania, beat them 2-0, played against Kenya, my home country, beat Kenya 2-0. So I'm really looking forward to see what will come out of this game. Will Uganda Cranes be able to progress to the quarterfinals for the first time? But then I'm also looking forward to see what comes out of Madagascar. Will they make history? Will they become, the debutants who probably a fairy tale kind of
when they take on DR Congo. Okay,
yes, so those are the 2 matches that I'm really looking forward to. But tomorrow, Uganda Cranes, that match.
We will see. Lynn Mashira, thank you very much. Peter, I'm sure you're looking forward to Nigeria. Can they do the business against Cameroon on Saturday? Well, or will they suffer the repeat of that disaster against Madagascar? I've not even talked to you about that on air yet.
Banish that thought from your head, Piers. Thank you very much. Piers Edwards there in Cairo. Now, 4 young Cameroonian girls have developed an app that helps to connect patients and potential blood donors. The young inventors, aged around 13 years old, have created an app called Hemo, which you can access online and or through an Android phone. Caroline Loyer from BBC Africa's children program What's New has more.
Passionate about computers and technology, these 4 schoolgirls, also known as the Geek Girls, have decided to put their knowledge to help others. They've created an app to connect people who need blood with potential donors. So, how did they come up with this idea?
Many members of our family passed away due to the lack of blood.
For the past 3 months, the girls did extensive research on the subject and discovered a very different reality.
We carried out questionnaires. We interviewed people, and many of them told us that when you get to the blood bank, they tell you to bring people with you to give blood, or alternatively, you have to pay extortionate prices.
L'autre alternative sera de payer le sang utilisé à des coûts exorbitants.
And it's on that basis that the Gig Girls developed the Hemo app. How it works is very simple. Donors and recipients only need to register themselves.
Et les gens qui ont besoin du sang, ils appuient sur Search Donors.
People who need blood just need to click on Search Donors. They are asked to give their blood types and location, and then a list come up with a matching people.
Qui ont enregistré dans la location et le groupe sanguin qui sont...
4 months after its launch, Hemo app has been downloaded for free by more than 50 people. Its success is pushing the team to want to do even better.
Nous voulons utiliser un meilleur langage de programmation.
We want to use an accessible language so we can increase the app's users. We also want to improve the app's design and its coding problems.
The girls hope one day to export Hemo app beyond the borders of Cameroon.
We want to make this app from national level to an international level. We want to export the app in every single country in the Central African region and in the most suitable language.
Today, the Gig Girls are working on a French version of the app in order to hopefully save more lives.
Now, he's renowned for his architectural work, amongst them the National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. Now, Sir David Ajayi has taken his talent to Italy. He spoke to Victoria Wahunda.
As a Ghanaian, I'm deeply proud, deeply proud, and it's an incredible opportunity to be at this moment where I can contribute to such a wonderful idea about nation forming.
David, you've traveled the world and the continent at large. How much of your travels have influenced your work and how you work with other artists?
I'm an African architect. My work is always influenced by Africa. It's the only perspective I know. I'm made that way. So when I'm making modern architecture, it's fused with an idea of modern Africa. And when I'm making work that is trying to kind of understand history, it's always in that narrative. I can never be out of myself. I can never be out of my Africanness.
We've got 54 countries on the continent, and yet we only have 8 here at the Biennale in 2019. What more can be done to get more African countries to represent themselves and their art here at the Biennale?
I think governments misunderstand how powerful art is in the world. And I think that there's a message to be had to nations that the soft power, the kind of negotiating power of art, which is one that talks about the kind of potential of culture and the potential of peoples, can be really manifest in the forms that artists make. We have some of the greatest artists in the world, but I think as nations we're not using them as our soft power. They really are, for me, our best ambassadors.
The world is in constant change, be it climate change or be it technology. How much of that does influence your work and how you get into projects?
In my work, I'm trying to always talk through this idea of inert, inbuilt sustainability, not just sustainability for tricks and technology, but also longevity, energy use, life cycles. And all the artists here are also interested in this. Elan Sui, probably one of the greatest sculptors in the world who we're standing behind, is recycling liquor bottles that are thrown away, that become the blockages of our places.
This is the same art that any kids on the continent are actually making. We see them with the small bicycles.
Comes from that root. Comes from that root, the resourcefulness of African kids.
Nice one. Don't forget you can get in touch with me and some of the team on Twitter. I'm at Okwoche. But for now, from Focus on Africa, me, Peter Okwoche, and the rest of the team, thanks for watching. Goodbye.